The Slack ping hit me like a mosquito at midnight. Annoying, predictable, and always thirsty. Board wants another miracle deck by 7 a.m., wrote Evan. No greeting, no please, just a hollow bark like I was Alexa in business casual. I stared at the message, already 3 fingers deep into a bottle of cheap Pinot, wearing an old conference t-shirt that said "Innovation never sleeps," half the letters peeling off. My laptop was closed. My patience was buried 6 feet under. I hovered my thumb over the keyboard, debating whether sarcasm or silence would sting more. I went with dry honesty. Cool. I told them your miracle runs on my unpaid overtime. Sent, read, nothing. I could almost hear his smirk through the void, that smug static of a man who believed he could squeeze one more PowerPoint messiah out of me before sunrise. 20 minutes later, I toggled the back-end sync off. No fireworks, no dramatic music, just a quiet click. One buried toggle inside the scheduling logic I'd written from scratch. In that instant, Evan's entire meeting calendar evaporated like a fart in a server room. Board syncs? Gone. Client reviews? Vanished. The quarterly prep call he claimed couldn't happen without my deck? Poof. Before you clutch your pearls. No, I didn't hack anything. I was the architect. I built the system, the dashboards, the permissions matrix, the routing logic that funneled every request like blood through a clogged artery. I didn't need to break anything. I just loosened a bolt. Evan called it magic. I called it scope creep with a smile. I wasn't planning revenge that night. I just wanted to breathe, to exist for one damn evening without Evan's voice echoing in my inbox like a corporate poltergeist. For 5 years, I had spun miracles out of caffeine and duct tape, built forecasts no one questioned, decks that made investors cry like I'd resurrected Steve Jobs. Evan never once credited me. Not on paper, not in meetings. He'd slap my work onto a screen and announce, "My team crushed it," like he was the visionary and I was the unpaid intern holding the glue gun. I tolerated it, until the night he laughed when I asked about back pay. Not a full laugh. Just that smug little chuckle where he tilts his head like your ambition is an adorable hobby. That's when something inside me calcified. The decks, the modules, the projections that made him look like a genius. They weren't just company property. They were licensed through my LLC, buried in the fine print of a master service agreement no one bothered to read when they rushed to give me dual roles during that Series B chaos. I was both their salaried ghost and their freelance oracle, and they never read the damn MSA, so when I flipped the switch on his calendar, it wasn't sabotage. It was reclamation. A quiet reminder that maybe, just maybe, you shouldn't build your empire on unpaid overtime and stolen credit. Evan thought the miracles would keep flowing. But I wasn't the faucet. I was the plumbing, and the pipes had just groaned. The silence afterward was delicious. No pings, no apologies, just the faint hum of corporate oblivion unaware the glue was peeling. I poured another glass. My cat, Pixel, jumped onto my lap. The Slack icon blinked again, but I didn't check it. Let him sweat. Flashback 3 years. Back when I was still dumb enough to think startups run on hustle was something to be proud of. The company, Lumacore Analytics, was a Frankenstein of buzzwords held together by caffeine and investor adrenaline. No infrastructure. No structure at all, really. Evan, the founder, had hired me as director of strategy, which at the time translated loosely to fix everything no one else understands and occasionally run the ops meetings when I'm golfing. And I didn't blink. I was good at turning chaos into choreography. Timelines, forecasts, growth models. If it had a number, I could make it sing. The problem? None of the internal tools worked. We were basically running on a Slack channel and a prayer. So I built the damn system myself, from scratch. Forecasting dashboards in Tableau, automated investor decks built off Notion and Google Sheet scripts, API layers duct taped into our CRM. None of it came from IT. They were too busy figuring out why the CEO's Gmail said error 404. That system, the one Evan called my magic, wasn't theirs. It was mine. And buried deep in a licensing clause under Lumicore's dusty MSA was the proof. I didn't know it then, but I'd already built my insurance policy. I'd spun the entire infrastructure under my own LLC, Keller Strategy Group. The reason was simple. Lumicore didn't want to classify me as a full contractor. Too messy for payroll, Evan had said, waving it off like taxes were optional for geniuses. So Legal tried to get cute, a hybrid model. I'd be W-2 for internal work, and any client-facing deliverables would be contracted through my LLC. Same person, 2 hats, 0 credit. They thought they were saving money. I thought I was being clever. For a while, I even believed it. Investors quoted my decks like scripture. I'd hear my phrasing echoed in quarterly calls. Evan parroting my insights as if he'd invented metrics themselves. I'd sit muted on Zoom, sipping cold coffee, watching him collect applause for work that still had my metadata in the margins. I told myself it didn't matter. I was the quiet backbone, the glue, but glue only gets noticed when the wall collapses. Evan never once asked how anything worked. He didn't care that the dashboards aligned sales, ops, and retention into a single predictive model with 98% accuracy. He just clicked, smiled, and sent it to the board with a subject line like latest from our growth engine. He thought our meant him. He'd signed the paperwork himself, a master services agreement drafted by my lawyer friend Maddie. Clause 6.1b. In plain English, in the event of termination of equitable engagement or breach of payment terms, all usage rights to external-facing modules are immediately suspended. We added it after Lumicore delayed a contractor payment for 90 days and tried to blame liquidity issues. I used to joke about that clause. It's my panic button, I'd tell Maddie over wine. She'd smirk and say, "Someday, you'll thank me for it." That night, when Evan laughed at my back pay request, I did. I kept building miracles anyway, because that's what you do when you've been conditioned to earn validation through deliverables. I coded in the dark, automated half the company's workflows, and named the files boring things like Client Portal 3.1 instead of what they really were. Jennifer's spine. Every module, every script, every efficiency they bragged about at board meetings, they all ran through me. Then came the Slack message. "You're not client-facing, Jen. You're back-end support." 8 words that shrunk 5 years of loyalty into an afterthought. Back-end support. Like a printer, like a stapler, like a tool. And suddenly, every miracle I'd built felt like betrayal. I'd spent nights skipping therapy, dinners, even sleep to keep Evan's ego afloat. And now, I wasn't a strategist, I was an accessory. That day, something shifted. I didn't rage or cry. I just stopped pretending I didn't own the wiring. My systems weren't Lumicore's. They were mine, and ownership meant leverage. The meeting that broke the illusion happened 2 weeks later. 10 minutes, 3 people. Me, Evan, and their shiny new COO, Samantha Lee. She had that Silicon Valley aura. Perfect blazer, perfect teeth, perfect detachment. I'd prepared a 5-slide proposal. Simple, logical, borderline apologetic. A modest equity slice, retroactive contractor compensation, flexible payment schedule. All things Evan had verbally promised during bourbon-soaked strategy sessions. He walked in late, hydro flask in hand, radiating smug hydration energy. Didn't even sit. "All right, Jen, let's see what you've got." Slide 1. Dual role history, clean. Slide 2. Metrics added, crisp. Slide 3. Proposed compensation. 0.3% equity and back pay per MSA. Halfway through, he chuckled. "Wait, This is about equity? He turned to Samantha, laughed louder. She's not even client-facing. She's back-end support. My face didn't move, but my spine did. It cracked under 5 years of swallowing humiliation. Samantha's eyes flicked to her phone. "Let's circle back," she murmured. Meeting adjourned. I walked back to my desk on autopilot. When I reopened my laptop, my proposal folder was gone. Deleted. Not moved. Erased. The audit logs showed admin removed file. They hadn't even bothered to hide it. That was the last time I mistook silence for professionalism. That night, I didn't yell. I just opened my private drive. Keller Legal, Lumicore, 2019, MSA. I read Clause 6.1b out loud, word for word. Then Clause 7.4c. Attribution shall not be misassigned in any client-facing material using licensed modules. I didn't need revenge. I just needed memory. Proof that I wasn't the stapler. I was the electricity. That weekend, I didn't open Slack. I didn't check email. I didn't even pretend to care about syncing priorities. I spent 2 quiet evenings rereading my own contract, like scripture written in the language of justice. Every clause was a breadcrumb, leading back to one fact. They needed me more than I needed them. The systems weren't theirs. The miracles weren't theirs. Every module they ran, every dashboard they showed off to investors, still pinged my license key under Keller Strategy Group. Monday morning, Evan strutted into the office like a man allergic to humility. The first thing he did wasn't greet anyone or check his email. He opened his calendar and froze. "Where the hell is my Tuesday?" he shouted, stabbing the screen like it had betrayed him. His assistant, Chloe, looked up, half asleep and 1 espresso short of empathy. "What do you mean?" she asked. "It's blank," he snapped. "My meetings, gone. Board prep, QBRs, everything." 5 minutes later, it was in his office. 10 minutes after that, 3 engineers were sifting through logs, muttering about weird syncs. No crashes, no malware, no external breaches, just a perfect vacuum where Evan's meticulously curated empire used to live. They tried restoring backups. Nothing. The backups were clean, but his calendar was empty there too. The rest of the company ran fine. Finance, HR, ops. Everything else was untouched. Just Evan's world had gone dark. At 10:14 a.m., the Slack ping came. No greeting, no punctuation. Just 2 words. "Fix it." I took a slow sip of coffee before typing back. "You'll need to go through legal. I've separated my LLC environments. Send, no emoji, no flourish. Just truth." I imagined his expression, confused, then angry, then that cold flicker of realization that maybe, just maybe, the person he'd treated like a background process had been holding the admin keys all along. I didn't touch another key. I didn't need to. He must have marched straight to legal after that. I pictured him waving his phone in Maddie's face, demanding answers she couldn't give. They'd let the hybrid arrangement slide for years, too fast-paced to formalize. I was the Swiss Army knife, the multi-role miracle, cheaper than a full department, sharper than a consultant. They thought I'd never pull the pin, but I hadn't even pulled it. I'd just stopped giving them free oxygen. By Tuesday, the panic had settled like smog. The ops team was behind on deliverables. The board deck looked like a high school project, misaligned fonts, missing charts, numbers that didn't add up. Sales was in chaos because the pipeline tracker, my pipeline tracker, wasn't populating. Not broken, just absent. Evan had never once asked how the formulas worked. He thought the cloud was magic, not maintenance. Every morning, Chloe refreshed his calendar manually, sighing louder each day. She tried to rebuild from emails and sticky notes, but it was like reconstructing a sandcastle after high tide. One investor actually showed up to the wrong Zoom and spent 20 minutes being pitched by our UX intern before realizing Evan wasn't coming. By midweek, the investors were restless. Westbridge Capital, our biggest client, called Evan directly. Their first question wasn't about deliverables. It was, "Where's Jennifer?" I almost laughed when I heard that. He must have frozen. Then he said it. The lie. "She's out on medical leave. Nothing serious." The problem was, Westbridge had already emailed me. A clean, polite message from their strategy lead. Just confirming whether the timeline module still runs under your license or has been transferred to LumaCore ownership. I didn't respond. I just forwarded it to legal with a short note. Subject: clarification. Clause 7.4 C. Body: as Westbridge remains a direct beneficiary of Keller strategy modules, please confirm how LumaCore wishes me to respond. Note attribution clause in our current MSA. Happy to assist pending clarification on my operational status. Best, Jennifer Keller. No threats, no drama, just documentation. Legal didn't reply, which meant they were panicking. By Thursday, Evan looked like he hadn't slept in days. His eyes were bloodshot, his suit rumpled, his phone practically welded to his hand. The man who used to swagger through the office like a stock photo of confidence now looked like a LinkedIn cautionary tale. And all I'd done was stop doing free labor. By Friday, LumaCore felt like a city in blackout. Espresso machine still humming, Slack still pinging. But the heartbeat was gone. The ops floor that once pulsed with synthetic energy now moved in slow motion. Reports trickled in hours late. Sales complained that client data wasn't syncing. Finance discovered 3 forecasting anomalies, which was polite corporate code for "we don't know what the hell is going on." Evan's miracle machine was silent, and the silence was making everyone sweat. I wasn't watching from the sidelines. I was observing, calm, detached, cooking for once instead of stress snacking over my keyboard. Every alert that didn't arrive, every midnight ping that didn't light up my screen, was a small proof that I'd finally built something powerful. Peace. Evan's chaos no longer had a key to my door. That afternoon, an email arrived with the subject line: Request for licensing clarification. Internal Systems Inquiry. The sender was Amelia Sato, Associate Counsel at LumaCore Legal. I'd only interacted with her twice, once during onboarding and once when she accidentally sent me someone else's NDA. Both times, she'd treated me like a polite ghost. Now I had her full attention. Her message was clinical but jittery, the kind of corporate politeness that sweats between the lines. Hi, Jennifer. We're conducting an internal review of LumaCore's usage rights regarding certain operational modules. Could you please clarify the current schema for your LLC's licensing terms, especially those integrated pre-to-one? Additionally, we'd appreciate any supporting documentation related to client-facing materials and attribution guidelines. Best, Amelia Sato, Associate Counsel. Translation: Evan is in freefall and legal is building him a parachute out of printer paper. I didn't rush to reply. I made coffee, fed Pixel, went for a walk around the block while Evan probably yelled at interns. Then I sat down at my desk, opened my They Finally Noticed folder, and began my response. No grandstanding, no revenge monologue, just 3 attachments. 1. A PDF of the signed 2019 Master Services Agreement with digital timestamps. 2. A version history of every Keller module deployed inside LumaCore, complete with push logs, IP addresses, and code commit hashes. 3. A single-sentence email. Please refer to Equitable Usage Clauses 6.1b and 7.4c regarding attribution and license control. Best regards, Jennifer L. Keller, Founder, Keller Strategy Group. Send. It took 14 minutes for internal Slack channels to ignite like a disturbed beehive. I wasn't in them anymore, but friends still inside sent screenshots. One thread had Evan typing, "Wait, this can't be right. We own those modules, right?" Legal replied, "The documentation suggests otherwise." Another showed him DMing Amelia. "You're seriously saying we violated licensing just because of some naming error?" Her reply was ice. "It's not a naming error if the attribution clause was signed. You need to proceed carefully." Carefully. That's legal for you're screwed, but we're pretending it's fine. By evening, Evan's office looked like a war room. Glass walls papered with sticky notes, whiteboards filled with frantic arrows and question marks. He'd summoned 3 senior engineers, 2 product managers, and the CTO. He was trying to rewrite history in real time, dig through code commits, backdate documentation, anything to pretend my systems were internal builds. The CTO refused, wisely. Reports came to me in whispers, Evan yelling about sabotage, legal whispering about exposure, finance quietly double-checking contracts they'd never read. I hadn't sabotaged anything. I hadn't even logged into LumaCore's servers since toggling that first switch. All I'd done was respond, with truth, documentation, and a legally binding signature trail. But truth in the right format is a weapon, and mine had timestamps. That night, I poured another glass of Pinot, sat on my balcony, and watched the city lights flicker. Somewhere downtown, LumaCore's HQ was probably burning through caffeine and denial. I didn't feel victorious, just vindicated. For the first time in years, I didn't have to prove I was essential. The silence of my inbox was proof enough. The next morning, LumaCore's board convened. Technically, it was a quarterly alignment, but everyone knew the real reason. Evan's empire was crumbling in real time. His miracle decks had turned into ghost slides, his meetings into vapor, and his credibility into an HR case study. I wasn't invited, of course. But by 9:06 a.m., my Zoom lit up anyway. Jennifer Keller, external consultant. When the screen connected, the digital boardroom was chaos disguised as professionalism. Faces frozen in polite panic. Someone was whispering off camera. Another typed furiously, probably to legal. The chair, a silver-haired man named Thomas Avery, cleared his throat. "Ms. Keller, thank you for joining. We understand you've prepared some material." I nodded, unmuted, and began the slowest, calmest demolition of my career. Slide 1. Product dependencies. A simple chart. Clean, color-coded, lethal. It mapped which internal functions relied on Keller modules. Forecasting, client segmentation, automated deck generation, investor sync logic. Over half of LumaCore's agility layer glowed bright red. Slide 2. License attribution map. On the left, my original schema. Time-stamped. Signed. On the right, LumaCore's drift, where Evan's team had expanded internal access, used my tools in client demos without credit, even white-labeled 2 during their Series C roadshow. I'd included email headers where my name had been quietly cropped out. Slide 3. Risk matrix. Internal ops. Moderate disruption. Client-facing. High breach potential. Investor materials. Severe liability. I didn't explain. I didn't dramatize. I just clicked, paused, and let the silence do the talking. Thomas shifted in his chair. One board member muted and leaned off camera to whisper. Another typed something in the meeting chat. Finally, Erin Holtz, the only person who'd ever remembered my name at past investor dinners, leaned forward. "So," she said evenly, "you're the one who built all this?" I nodded once. "And who still owns it?" Another nod. No one spoke. You could almost hear the panic being throttled into polite composure. Then Thomas, voice measured but strained, asked, "You're not currently under engagement with LumaCore, correct?" "No," I said. My engagement ended the moment my proposal for retroactive compensation was deleted without review. I said it without emotion, like reading the weather report. "Is it recoverable?" Another board member ventured. The modules, I mean. Could we renegotiate usage? With proper contract terms, I said, but it would require reviewing retroactive use and calculating late fees per clause 6.1b. And if we don't renegotiate? I took a sip of coffee. Then I'd recommend a full system decoupling. I can provide a transition plan. That landed like a thunderclap. A few cameras flickered off. Someone coughed. Aaron exhaled sharply. No one asked about Evan. Not yet. But I could feel the pivot happening. The silent shift from how do we protect him to how do we protect the company. They ended the meeting without fanfare. Thomas mumbled something about reviewing next steps. I clicked leave meeting, and the world went quiet again. I didn't need to see what came next to know what would happen. Evan would show up late, he'd yell, legal would scold, and the board, now holding the receipts I'd just handed them, would start choosing survival over loyalty. Sure enough, that afternoon, my phone buzzed. It was Samantha, the COO, voice tight. The board wants clarification on your intent, she said. My intent? I asked. Yes. Are you planning to revoke access entirely? I haven't revoked anything, I said. I just enforced the contract they signed. She hesitated. You realize this could destabilize operations. Then maybe you should have read clause 7.4c, I said. Silence, then a quiet sigh. You're good, Jennifer. No, I said. I'm thorough. By 4 p.m., whispers had turned into confirmation. Evan had been temporarily relieved of calendar permissions. The internal memo didn't say suspended, but everyone read between the lines. That night, I slept like someone who'd just set a crooked painting straight after 5 years of pretending it didn't bother her. For the first time in forever, I didn't wake up to Slack pings or guilt. Just sunlight. And somewhere across town, Evan was watching his empire flicker, one missing meeting at a time. Monday arrived like a hangover for everyone except me. I brewed coffee, opened my laptop, and skimmed through a handful of new messages from LumaCore, all CC'd to legal now. The subject lines were nervous poetry. Urgent, access clarification, follow-up on board review. Next steps pending your availability. Translation? They'd realized I was the only one holding the keys. At 9:00 a.m., the official board meeting resumed. This time, Evan wasn't in his seat. His name floated on the Zoom panel, muted and ghostly. Technical difficulties? Someone muttered. Sure. The truth was less technical, more existential. Evan had run out of miracles. The chair, Thomas Avery, cleared his throat. Before we begin, he said, we'd like to confirm licensing status on all Keller Strategy Group modules currently embedded in LumaCore's infrastructure. Sitting beside him on screen was Amelia Sato, the associate counsel. Calm, surgical, efficient, the kind of calm that means someone already has the receipts. She tapped her tablet. We've completed our review, she began. Per the signed Master Services Agreement executed in 2019, renewed with Mr. Hargrove's signature this April, all externally deployed systems created by Keller Strategy Group remain proprietary unless compensated in accordance with equitable usage terms. Clause 6.1b. She said it like a judge reading a verdict. The words landed like a blade. She continued. Additionally, failure to provide attribution in client-facing materials, specifically during the Westbridge and Horizon Series C pitches, constitutes a violation of Clause 7.4c. Combined with the deletion of Ms. Keller's proposal and misrepresentation of her operational status, Keller Strategy Group retains full right to suspend LumaCore's use of said systems effective immediately. Silence. Someone swallowed audibly. From the corner tile, Evan's camera flickered on. His face looked like it had been left in the dryer too long, creased, defeated, desperate. This is sabotage, he barked. She's sabotaging the company from the inside. The chair didn't even blink. Erin Holtz leaned back in her seat, arms crossed, unimpressed. She's protecting her IP, she said dryly. I unmuted, voice steady. You authorized the clause when you signed the MSA renewal, Mr. Hargrove. Would you like a copy? Evan's mouth opened, but no sound came out. I clicked a button and dropped the file into the meeting chat. Luma Core MSA Renewal April 2025. PDF. A notification pinged across every participant's screen. Amelia opened it instantly. That aligns with our copy, she confirmed. One of the board members, a gray-haired investor who hadn't spoken all morning, finally looked up. Ms. Keller, he asked, have you already begun redirecting clients? Yes, I said simply. Only those whose contracts are explicitly tied to Keller modules. All legal, all documented. And they're staying with you? I paused just long enough for the silence to stretch. They asked me to call them when the lights went out. A ripple of tension passed through the virtual room. Evan's jaw twitched, his hands clenched out of frame. The man who once strutted through every meeting like he owned the building now looked like a ghost waiting for permission to fade. Let me be clear, I said, calm but sharp. I haven't shut anything down. I've merely enforced the contract you all signed. I'm not here to burn the company. I'm here to protect my work. The chair nodded slowly. Understood. Another board member, younger and clearly terrified, leaned in. Then what happens next? That depends, I said, on whether LumaCore intends to honor its obligations. For a long moment, no one spoke. You could almost hear the company's heartbeat, slow, anxious, real. Finally, Thomas glanced toward Amelia. We'll take this offline for immediate resolution. Ms. Keller, thank you for your professionalism. Professionalism. I nearly laughed. That word, after years of unpaid overtime and stolen credit, felt almost ironic. But I smiled. Of course, I said. I am always happy to clarify. As I clicked Leave Meeting, Evan's screen lingered in the corner, frozen mid-glare. His empire had been built on my systems, my clauses, my silence. And now, stripped of all that, he was nothing but a man with a blank calendar and a pile of unread contracts. I closed my laptop, exhaled, and for the first time in 5 years, felt entirely weightless. The day after the board meeting, I walked into LumaCore headquarters for the first time in months. Not as an employee, not even as a contractor, but as the asset. The difference was palpable. The lobby smelled like panic hidden under citrus cleaner. Reception smiled too wide. Security waved me through without question. It wasn't respect. It was recognition. They finally knew who kept the lights on. As the elevator hummed upward, I caught my reflection in the chrome panel. No blazer, no badge, no mask. Just me, Jennifer Keller, the woman who built the miracle machine everyone took for granted. When the doors opened onto the 15th floor, the energy was off. Quieter. Empty chairs, cables coiled like forgotten vines, and Evan's glass office, once a theater of confidence, was hollow. His whiteboards had been wiped. The motivational posters were gone. The nameplate had vanished. Only the ghost of dry erase ink remained, spelling half a sentence. Forecasting alignment. And then nothing. A new assistant sat at the corner desk, eyes wide, probably fresh out of grad school. She whispered to someone nearby. That's her, right? She's the one who built it. I didn't turn. I didn't need to. Let the myth do its work. Amelia from legal met me in the main conference room. Jennifer, she said with the cautious politeness of someone standing between a grenade and the person who pulled the pin. We've processed the payment for your outstanding invoices, all of them, with late fees indexed per clause 5.2A. I raised an eyebrow. All of them? She nodded. Everyone. Behind her, Thomas Avery sat at the table, hands folded, his expressions somewhere between apology and recruitment pitch. "We'd also like to discuss a new MSA," he said. "Different terms, retainer-based, direct reporting line to the board." I sat down across from him, letting the silence stretch just long enough to make everyone shift in their seats. "Before we discuss any new arrangement," I said, "I'll need written confirmation that all proprietary systems have been restored under the correct Keller strategy licenses, and I want that acknowledgement signed, not verbal." Thomas nodded. Understood. He was a man who finally realized charm couldn't fix code. "Good," I said, leaning back. "Then we can talk about the future." We spent the next hour outlining terms, though I already knew the outcome. They wouldn't dare move forward without me now. Not after watching their miracle boy implode live in front of the board. Evan hadn't been fired publicly. Corporate optics never worked that way. But his name had been quietly removed from the Slack directory. The hallway talk was that he'd taken time off to focus on personal matters, which, in startup language, meant he's gone, and we don't say his name. As the meeting wrapped, Amelia slid a folder across the table. "This is the updated system restoration plan," she said. 3 phases: modular, scalable, fully documented. At the bottom, in small gray font, one line read, "Support available via Keller Strategy Group. External retainer only." I smiled. "Looks like you've learned to read the fine print." Amelia allowed herself a small, tired grin. "We've had some practice." When I left the building, the late afternoon sun reflected off the glass facade, the same way it used to on my walk home after another 12-hour day. But this time, I didn't feel invisible. I didn't feel small. I felt precise, like the system I'd built. Clean, balanced, and completely mine. As I stepped onto the sidewalk, my phone buzzed. A new message from Westbridge Capital. "Congrats on the restructure. We'd like to retain Keller Strategy for independent forecasting consultation. Same deliverables, better rates." I laughed out loud, right there on the street, startling a passing intern. That night, I opened a fresh bottle of wine, fed Pixel an unnecessary amount of tuna, and watched my inbox fill with opportunity instead of orders. In the end, I didn't burn Lumicore. I just took back what was mine. You don't have to raise your voice when the contract already speaks for you. And as the city lights blinked below my apartment window, I realized the best revenge was never chaos. It was control. The kind that came with one quiet click, one clause, and one well-timed text.